Hi, welcome to your mindset module for this month. It's a question of ethics and a guide to living by your own true values. And hopefully in this module, I'm going to try to empower you to make healthy and ethical choices easily. And I really want to make it clear that I like to empower people to live according to their own values of compassion. I'm not asking anyone to live by my values, but helping you to connect to your own values. And why on earth would this be part of a weight loss program? Well, I found that being an ethical vegan has been my biggest tool to eating a healthy diet and losing weight, because it means that I've already made the decision not to eat animal products that are not healthy because they are calorie dense and nutrient poor, and that decision is bigger than just my own petty little struggles with weight. And this commitment forms part of my identity, and I just couldn't go back on that commitment because it wouldn't feel like I was being true to myself at a very deep level. And of course, are there other unhealthy vegan foods? Sure, there are unhealthy vegan foods, but committing to ethical veganism certainly lessens the number of temptations that you have to deal with. And that's really important because willpower is a very limited resource. If you're like most people, you like animals. In fact, you may even think of yourself as an animal lover. But you also probably eat meat, dairy, eggs, and other animal products. We live in a culture that doesn't support us in making ethical or healthy choices around food. In fact, we live in a culture where animal abuse is the norm, and where those who oppose that abuse are often seen as extreme. One of the things that really highlights this moral schizophrenia we have around our relationship with animals is how we place great value on teaching our children to be compassionate to animals. We dress them in clothes with images of animals on them. We read them books with animal characters. We put stuffed animals in their beds. We teach them to use gentle hands when they pet animals. And yet at the same time, we feed them the bodies of some of those very same animals that we teach them kindness for. So the disconnect starts very early, and most of us grow up never even questioning why we share our homes with some animals and eat others. But I think that part of us is actually troubled by this behaviour. I found that many people, when they find out that I'm vegan, will feel the need to defend their behaviour by saying that they don't eat a lot of meat. So much so that I'm left wondering who is actually eating all the meat, because the number of animals slaughtered each day is staggering, so someone must be eating them. And I have to tell you that I have never felt like I had to defend my decision to eat broccoli or potatoes, or pretend that I eat less fruit than I actually do. There's been research done showing that 95% of people believe that it is morally wrong to impose unnecessary suffering to animals, and yet 95% of people impose unnecessary suffering on animals because they eat them. Now, the very principle that veganism is based on is that we have a moral obligation not to impose unnecessary suffering on animals. And no one doubts that. We could, of course, have an interesting and lengthy discussion about what necessity means and when suffering or harm is necessary. But determining what necessity means as an absolute matter isn't actually necessary for our purposes. All that is necessary is that we agree on what is not necessary. We all can agree that it is not necessary to inflict suffering on animals for reasons of pleasure, amusement, or convenience. So, although we might disagree about whether particular instances of animal suffering are necessary, we would all agree that suffering imposed on animals solely because it brings us pleasure or because we find it amusing or convenient is not necessary. Our moral schizophrenia where animals are concerned is profound. We see it in the context of news stories and outrage regarding the consumption of dog meat in countries like Vietnam. People are commonly horrified by footage showing dogs being thrown into small cages, being treated inhumanely before being slaughtered and eaten. And yet this is exactly what happens to the animals that we eat. In other countries, pigs or cows are seen as sacred, and the idea of eating them is not morally acceptable. The reality is that there is no moral difference between killing and eating a cow and killing and eating a dog. Both are arbitrary distinctions. Both are sentient beings who feel pain, pleasure, fear, and who value their lives. No animal wants to die, and no animal wants to suffer. But don't we need to eat meat to be healthy? The short answer is no. No one maintains that it is necessary to eat animal foods. Even the extremely conservative Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics, which used to be called the American Dietetic Association, has stated that it is the position of the American Dietetic Association that appropriately planned vegetarian diets, including total vegetarian or vegan diets, are healthful, nutritionally adequate, and may provide health benefits in the prevention and treatment of certain diseases. Well-planned vegetarian diets are appropriate for individuals during all stages of the life cycle, including pregnancy, lactation, infancy, childhood, and adolescence, and for athletes. In fact, researchers at Loma Linda University in California have been conducting a study to determine whether vegetarians and vegans live longer than the rest of the population. And so far, the answer seems to be a resounding yes. The results suggest that on average, vegetarian men and women live 9.5 and 6.1 years longer, respectively, than their meat-eating counterparts. The study also indicates that in general, vegans are about 14 kilograms leaner, and that vegans are less insulin resistant than meat eaters, and vegan diets are protective against heart disease, cancer, diabetes, and autoimmune disease. So you may be thinking that you agree with me on the meat issue, but you ask, what's wrong with dairy or eggs? They don't kill the animals for those products. But that's actually a common misconception. Animals used for dairy and eggs do suffer, and they are all slaughtered, just as those animals used for only meat are slaughtered. Most animals used for dairy and eggs, like animals used just for meat, are kept in factory farm conditions. Contrary to popular belief, cows don't produce milk automatically and consider it a big favour that we milk them. They need to be pregnant first. They are artificially and forcibly impregnated using what the industry calls a rape rack. Once they've been impregnated, they are continually lactating. If we drink cow's milk, then the babies, the calves, for whom that cow's milk is intended, never actually get it. Newborn calves are taken away from their mothers shortly, sometimes immediately, after that they've been born. And no one seriously disputes that this causes distress to the mother and the baby. Many of the female calves will become dairy cows. They are fed formula so that they don't get their mother's milk. The rest of the females and all of the males will become meat animals, with some being raised in confined conditions and slaughtered after about 6 months to be sold as veal. All the cows, whether they're raised for meat or milk, will end up in the slaughterhouse. Dairy cows can live for 25 years, but they're usually slaughtered after 4 or 5 years when their productivity starts to wane. As for the egg industry, after hatching, the chicks are separated into males and females, and because male chicks will not be able to produce eggs, and because laying chickens are a specific laying breed that are not suitable to meat animals, it means that all of the male chicks that are hatched are actually killed by being thrown alive into grinding machines or suffocated in garbage bags or gassed. Most laying hens are confined in tiny battery cages where they get on average 67 square inches of space, or about the size of a single sheet of A4 paper, and that's where they live their entire lives. Many laying hens are also subjected to forced molting, where the birds are starved for a period to cause them to lose their feathers and forcing their reproductive processes to rejuvenate. They're also debeaked to stop them from injuring each other. And those hens who are not confined in battery cages and are raised in cage-free or free-range circumstances still suffer horribly. The conditions are not great. And laying hens are all slaughtered once their egg-producing capacity decreases, usually after 1 or 2 laying cycles. So even if all you eat are eggs, you're still directly responsible for the suffering and death of many chickens. The bottom line is that there is as much suffering in a glass of milk or an egg as there is in a steak. Another misconception is that we need to eat meat to get protein and we need to drink milk to get calcium. The meat, dairy and egg industries have convinced us that we have to go through an animal to get these nutrients. Not only that, but we have to go through an animal who got those nutrients from plants. You see, plants are nutrient producers and animals are nutrient consumers. So what we really need to do is to skip the middleman and go straight to the plants. But there's this real fear instilled in us that we need to drink cow's milk to get enough calcium for strong bones. Yet the highest source of calcium are green leafy vegetables. I mean, think about it, that's what cows eat. In fact, if we're looking for the highest source of calcium in milk form, it's not cow's milk, it's hyena milk. So why don't we consume hyena milk? Well, because hyenas are not as easy to control as cows. They'd kill you if you tried to steal the milk for their babies. So hyena milk is not a good business model. And I would suggest that that's the real reason that we're told that we need to consume cow's milk in order to get our calcium. But do animals actually feel pain? And the short answer is, of course they do. All animals, including fish, have special nerves called nociceptors that are located on their skin and other parts of the body that link to their brains via the spinal column. And any being who can feel pain has an interest, a preference or desire not to feel pain. It doesn't matter whether an animal feels pain in the same way that a human does, or even in the same way as other members of the same species feel pain. Part of our conventional wisdom is that non-human animals like us feel pain and that we all have an interest in not suffering pain. And although there are always some people who will say things like animals don't feel pain or animals don't have feelings, no one really believes that. After all, we've had laws requiring that we treat animals humanely for hundreds of years now. And those laws may be pretty ineffective, but we have them on the books because we all recognize that animals feel pain, that they can suffer, and that they have feelings. And after all, we don't have laws requiring humane treatment of rocks or trees. We definitely know the difference. And part of the problem is that we never get to see the pain, the suffering, and the death that's caused by our meat consumption. And that raises a very serious human rights issue. If you're eating meat, you're paying someone else to do your dirty work. Most people couldn't bring themselves to cut the throat of a pig or kill a cow or a chicken. Instead, they pay other people to become desensitized to blood and death and the pain of animals. These people spend 8 hours a day, 6 days a week, 48 weeks a year killing. And I've spoken to slaughterhouse workers and factory farm workers, and their perspective to animal pain and suffering is very different to most people's. And these people are usually from lower socioeconomic groups who really don't have a choice. They need a job. They need to feed their family. They suffer high rates of suicide and psychological problems, including post-traumatic stress disorder. But aren't there laws that require the humane treatment of animals? Yes, there are laws that supposedly require that we treat animals humanely and that we not inflict unnecessary suffering on them. But in reality, these laws are quite useless. First of all, the laws don't prohibit uses that are unnecessary. They supposedly prohibit only treatment that is not necessary to a given use. And we have already seen that eating animals and animal products is not necessary for human health. And because of that, all the suffering incidental to using animals as food is unnecessary. But eating animal products is a tradition. To use tradition or culture to justify anything is just another way of saying that we've done something for a long time, so we're justified in continuing to do it. We know that people have been eating animal foods for a long time. That's the point. We're challenging that behavior as being inconsistent with our true values and our conditional wisdom that we must be able to justify imposing suffering or death on animals. There are many other examples where tradition was used to justify behaviors that were morally abhorrent. The practice of slavery in America is one such tradition that was carried on for many hundreds of years and then successfully challenged. The same non-argument of tradition is used to defend bullfighting. If you criticize bullfighting in places like Spain, those who defend it will shout at you about the fact that this is an honoured tradition. And again, what does that mean? It means that people have been torturing bulls for fun for a very long time. So what? There's a common belief that being vegan is just a personal choice. Well, that depends on what you mean by choice. I believe that the word choice actually demeans the lives of the animals who suffer. You choose a new dress or a movie to go and see. You don't choose to kill innocent beings. When we were children, we weren't given a choice. We were indoctrinated to eat meat and to never question that behaviour. There's an invisible belief system that conditions us to eat meat, milk and eggs. We tend to assume that only vegans and vegetarians follow a belief system, but when eating animals is not a necessity, which is in fact the case, then it is a decision. And decisions always stem from a belief. Eating meat is a dominant ideology, meaning that it's so widespread that its doctrine is seen as a given rather than a choice. Eating animals is just the way things are, and it is a violent ideology. Meat, dairy and eggs can't be procured without violence. This ideology runs counter to core human values, things like compassion and justice. So people need defense mechanisms to distort their thoughts and numb their feelings so that they can act against their values without fully realizing what they're doing. Everything we do, everything we buy, and everything we eat has an impact on someone else. We don't get to decide whether we make a difference or not. We get to decide only whether that the difference we inevitably make is negative or positive. Those are our only two choices. There are no neutral actions. But isn't eating meat natural? No, we're not obligate carnivores who see a bird or a rabbit and start running after our lunch. That's not who we are. That's not how we're built. We don't want to see the blood and the guts. That disgusts us. We don't want to be part of that process, and physiologically we can't be part of that process. We don't have the teeth, we don't have the claws, and we don't have the speed that's required to run down prey and kill it. We can't do it, and we don't want to. If you want to know what it looks like to be a natural carnivore or omnivore, natural to eat animals, then watch your dog or your cat when they see a bird or a rabbit. A cat will get really focused, their eyes dilate, they get down really low and their tail starts to flicker. And that's not how we respond when we see a live animal. That's not even how we respond when we see a dead animal on the side of the road. Our first response is, ooh, I don't want to see the blood and the guts. And the second is compassion. We don't take out our forks and start getting ready for lunch. The truth is that humans compare physically far more to herbivores than they do to carnivores or omnivores. Carnivores and omnivores have well-developed claws, and we don't have claws. We don't have the sharp teeth that carnivores have. And we have flat molar teeth that are seen in herbivores like sheep that we use for grinding. Carnivores have a very short intestinal tract so that they can quickly expel decaying meat. Herbivores have a much longer intestinal tract, as we do as humans. Herbivores and humans have weak stomach acid relative to carnivores who have strong hydrochloric acid in their stomachs to digest meat. Herbivorous animals have well-developed salivary glands for pre-digesting fruits and grains and have alkaline saliva that's needed to pre-digest grains, as do humans. Carnivorous animals don't have similar salivary glands and have an acid saliva. And we're told by advocates of the paleo diets that we should eat the way our ancestors ate. But how did they eat? Most of the more recent science is showing that we were eating mostly fruit, vegetables, nuts, leaves, and the occasional bit of insect, frog, bird or mouth. And so it's not even looking like it's natural from a historic point of view. So no, eating meat is not natural. Then why do we have canine teeth? On the picture on the left shows the canine tooth of an animal who is designed to eat meat, a tiger. And on the left is, you can see the on the right, you can see the canine teeth of a human, which is a herbivore. And hopefully from these two pictures you can really see the difference in what they should be used for. The fact is that horses also have canine teeth, and so the best response to the canine teeth argument is just to get over it. So I encourage you not to take just my word for all of this. Educate yourself. There are lots and lots of free resources that you can use to find out what is really happening with your meat and your food. And here are a few items that I've listed that I can suggest to you for watching for free on YouTube. So don't bury your head in the sand. Go out there and find the truth and what is going to sit comfortably for your values. And I know that watching those kind of things is very painful for many people. But I would like to suggest that there is a gift in our pain. Pain is the mirror in which we can see the reflection of our humanity. So, in closing, what we choose to eat makes a powerful statement about our ethics and our view of the world, and even about our very humanity. By not buying meat, dairy and eggs, we withdraw our support from cruel industries. Choosing to act with compassion is a potent public affirmation of our character. So remember the words of Martin Luther King Jr., who said, "Cowardice asks the question, is it safe? Expediency asks the question, is it politic? Vanity asks the question, is it popular? But conscience asks the question, is it right?" And there comes a point when one must take a position that is neither safe, nor politic, nor popular, but one must take it because it is right. And I ask you if today is the day for you to take that position.